Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. The countdown continues towards the Carlsen-Caruana World Championship match in November in London. Only 55 days to go, and that is less than 8 weeks. It will be the 47th event in the history of the undisputed and official World Championship, and on Chess to Impress we are looking at the 46 events that went before this one. Let's go back to 1954 when world champion, the 6th world champion Mikhail Botvinnik, defended his title for the 2nd time, this time against his compatriot Vasily Smyslov. I have said Smyslov for all my life, but I've learned from a Russian colleague that the proper pronunciation is Smyslov with a push on the last syllable. I'll try to do that. How did this match come about? Well, Smyslov won the famous Candidates Tournament in Zurich in 1953. It was a 15-player double round robin, which means that the players played each other with both white and with black, so a total of 28 rounds. We don't see those tournaments anymore, unfortunately. Smyslov won. He won 9 games, he drew 18 and lost only 1, and he was 2 points ahead of Bronstein, Keres and Reshevsky. The match for the world title was held in the Tchaikovsky Concert Hall in Moscow, the same venue as the 1951 match Botvinnik-Bronstein. The best of 24 games, and in case of a 12-12 outcome, Botvinnik would retain the title. He needed that regulation in 1951 when Bronstein held him to a 12-12 draw. The 1954 match was a very bloody match. Of the 24 games, 14 were decisive, and in the middle of the match we saw 8 decisive games in a row. Quite amazing. We see world champion Botvinnik on the right and his challenger Vasily Smyslov on the left. In this video we're going to have a look at game 9 of this match. Let's get into it. It was the 3rd of April 1954. White was a challenger Vasily Smyslov and black the world champion Mikhail Botvinnik. e4 was opened by Smyslov and Botvinnik played the French defense. Knight c3 and bishop b4. We are in the Winawer variation, named after the Polish-German top player Simon Winawer, who played in the era of Wilhelm Steinitz, the first official world champion. We had seen this position 3 times earlier in the match. In game 7, Smyslov played a3 here, but he chose e5 for this game, which he had played twice before. c5, a3, and nowadays we mostly see bishop takes c3 check here, b takes, knight e7, and then queen g4 is the most popular move. But in 1954, Botvinnik retreated his bishop to a5, keeping the pin in the position. And b4, a known idea from Smyslov. One of White's ideas is to play the knight from c3 through b5 to the very strong square on d6. It may cost him a pawn, but if the knight arrives there, that would be a great achievement for White. c takes d4 was played by Botvinnik, and now knight b5 was indeed played in the 1st and 3rd game of this match, but for this 9th game Smyslov had prepared queen g4, attacking the pawn on g7. It was a few months after the match that Botvinnik had this position against Wolfgang Unziker in the Olympiad, and he played king f8, and in his notes to that game he said, "A few months before the Olympiad I played knight e7 in the 9th game of the World Championship against Smyslov and found myself in great trouble." And indeed he played knight e7 here. As Botvinnik said, he got in great trouble after this move. Smyslov took the bishop and Botvinnik took the knight. A piece is swapped in a very unusual way, and now Smyslov took the pawn on g7. The rook is hanging, rook g8, protected by the knight, and White took on h7. Here knight bc6 is the right move, but Botvinnik has an idea with knight d7, which was the move in the game. He wants to play knight f8 to kick that queen out of his position. Knight f3 developing, knight f8 as planned, the queen dropped back to d3, and Botvinnik took on a5, restores the material balance. Do you know the saying, passed pawns must be pushed? Well, Smyslov knew it, and he pushes his h-pawn, which is a passed pawn, even though it was still on its initial square. It has no pawns in the way to h8. Bishop d7 developing, and bishop g5. Smyslov here writes about this move. This prevents black from castling queenside and dominates the black squares. Most important is the threat to advance the h-pawn. Smyslov indeed wants to keep pushing that pawn. And black indeed cannot castle queenside because then the knight on e7 is hanging. Rook c8 from Botvinnik and knight d4. Smyslov writes centralizes the knight and prevents the maneuver rook c8 to c4 to e4 by putting the knight in the way. Here's a nice variation I found in the book by Grandmaster Raymond Keane about this game. Rook c4, then queen e3 is white's best move, and then you might think you can play knight f5 attacking white's queen, but white takes that knight, and if you then think that you can win white's queen with rook e4 with that skewer, then you will be disappointed because of the mate in one. Very nice checkmate, the bishop taking these squares away. After knight d4, Botvinnik played knight f5. Rook b1 from Smyslov, attacking the b7 pawn, and Smyslov writes, this humble move lays the foundation for the attack. Rook c4 from Botvinnik, not a good move. He really should have played b6 here to save that pawn. Rook c4 was played, he's going for activity, probably wanting to use the fact that white's king, like black's king, is still in the center. And Smyslov calls this a fatal idea, which is elegantly refuted. Let's see how Smyslov refuted it. He took on f5. The knight was hanging on d4. E takes f5, and there goes the pawn. Rook e4 check. And now look at this move. White takes the rook with the queen, sacrifices his queen. Not only a good move, but it's actually the best move in the position according to the engine. It looks more spectacular than it is, as Smyslov has seen that he will get the queen back 3 moves later. Smyslov himself writes, ends the short but heated battle. The black king is in a mating net. Let's see. The queen was taken, and rook b8 check. And bishop c8 is the only move, but white is not taking the bishop. He is playing bishop b5 check. Very strong move. And now black has to return the queen because knight d7, the only other legal move, is refuted by rook takes. You have to interpose the queen and checkmate. So after bishop b5 check, Botvinnik had to give his queen. Rook takes, and let's do a body count. White is an exchange and a pawn up, and his h-pawn is a monster. Knight e6 and bishop f6, not worrying about the g2 pawn. This bishop now covers the promotion square. Botvinnik took on g2. A dying man can eat anything. There goes the h-pawn. Bishop a6, and here we already have the last move in the game, which is h6, not worrying about his attacked rook. h6 is in fact stronger than saving the rook with check, which looks like a good option. Rook b8 check, then king d7, and if you then push the h-pawn, then there is e3, and you still have to be careful with white. For example, if you play h7, that is a big blunder because of e takes f2 check, king d1 only move, and mate in 2. This is checkmate. The bishop is taking the e2 square away, and the pawn is taking the d2 square away. So you still have to be careful. Let's go back. We played rook b8 check, king d7, h6, and e3. What if we take on e3 then? Well, then black gets a draw with rook takes c2. And the threat is rook d1 with a skewer, and then protecting the promotion square. So let's have a look. h7, rook c1 check, king f2, rook takes. Yes, you can promote. Rook takes, but then there is c2. You have to defend the promotion square, and then knight c5 with the threat of knight d3 or knight b3 to control the c1 square. And black has a winning position. So we have to be careful. Let's go back again. Rook b8 check, king d7, h6, e3, and then we played f takes e3, rook takes e2, with the threat of rook c1 check. So if we play king d1, well then black gets a draw, starting with rook d2 check, and the bishop is coming to d3, and black is setting up a perpetual. Okay, back to the game. Bishop a6, and h6 was played, after which Botvinnik resigned. Is it really that bad? Can we really not stop the h-pawn? Well, let's try something. Let's try bishop takes b5. Let's take that rook, and then h7. And let's play e3. That worked in the previous variation, but now white promotes with check. King d7, f takes e3. You can take on c2, but now there is rook h7, and white is just too much material up, and there is no perpetual now. Let's give it one last try. What about h6? And then instead of taking the rook, we play e3 straight away. So we're a move quicker. Then h7, e takes f2 check. We just saw a variation where that led to checkmate. And the black king can still not go to d squares. But now it can go to f1, because the bishop is no longer controlling the f1 square. Attacking the rook, there's no checkmate, and white will easily win by promoting that pawn. So it was not all that straightforward. Smyslov had to calculate a lot of variations before pushing h6, which was a very precise move and caused Botvinnik to resign. It was game 9, and before the game Botvinnik had been 5-3 ahead, so after this game the score was 5 points to 4 in favor of the world champion. As you can see from this table, this game started the 8-game streak of decisive games. Smyslov won 2 more after game 9, he won game 10 and 11, and then Botvinnik struck back in game 12 and 13. They kept trading blows, and you can see that this match, like the 1951 match, also ended in 12-12. Botvinnik remained world champion, there were no tie breaks in those days, but for the second time, only by the skin of his teeth, by drawing the match. A bitter pill to swallow for Smyslov, but unlike Bronstein, who never played for the World Championship again, he got another chance. Botvinnik and Smyslov played another match for the World Championship 3 years later in 1957, and that's what the next video is about. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like the video, if you like the series, please share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. The link to the series is here. We keep counting down towards the Carlsen-Caruana match. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.